Before we begin creating animation and video, it's important to understand what exactly it is. All video starts with animation. The most fundamental premise of animation is the persistence of vision. This is the visual illusion of movement. When you see sequentially altered images rapidly changing over time, your brain maps them together, filling in the gaps to see movement. So how do pictures move exactly? Well, we use something called the persistence of vision. This is the illusion of movement that is created by a physical property of the eye. When the human eye sees something, it keeps an after image for 1/25th of a second. The illusion that the eye is still seeing is the image after it's actually gone. One of the earliest instruments of optical illusions using persistence of vision is the zoetrope. This was created in China in 180 AD by Ding Han, and later in 1833, a mathematician named William Horner built the European zoetrope. A zoetrope is a cylinder that has multiple slits equidistantly set apart. Inside the vertical slits is a ring of paper with a series of images on it. These images are more or less the same, but have a slight difference in each one that make an overall change when the images are compiled together. This happens when you spin the zoetrope and look through the slits and see the pictures on the opposite sides. These pictures are moving so fast that they blur into one and they seem like the image is actually moving. So a good summary of what animation is that it's the art of combining a series of differing images that create the appearance of movement when played back in rapid succession. The early experiments and innovations led to creating video with film and today digitally. Film today is produced by capturing images at a rate of 24 to 30 frames per second. Although there are cameras that can capture more images per second, the human eye cannot typically see anything faster than 30 frames per second. We have two methods of getting video today, analog and digital. Analog video was used from about 1953 to the early 2000s. Analog video is when a camera records RGB onto a magnetic tape along with audio and tracking, which tracks the speed regulation information. We refer to video as digital video nowadays, but when video originally started, it was analog information. Analog signals are transmitted via radio frequency, and they're picked up by an antenna. This is the old school way of transmitting television. The most common video broadcast standards are NTS and PAL. They both use a 4:3 ratio. I want you to be familiar with these terms, as when you produce video, you may see these options. Just in case you have to get video off older devices or systems and get it to a digitized format, you may encounter the following analog cable types. We have composite video, which combines RGB channels into a single signal. S-video has two channels, one for luminance, which is brightness, and one for chrominance, which is the color signals. There's component video. This keeps RGB channels separate for best quality. We also have VGA, which has 15 pins for transmitting RGB analog signals from a computer to a display. This is not digital, even though it's transmitting something from a computer to a projector or something along those lines. Digital cameras allow us to take audio and still frame images. It compresses them together and records this information to a digital tape or disc. This is stored in standard data units of measure, like kilobytes, megabytes, gigabytes, terabytes, and so on. Some common digital cable types are FireWire. This is an older cable, but there are cameras and computers out there that still support it. We also have USB 2.0 and 3.0. This is a fairly universal digital delivery connector, but it is not necessarily the fastest method to transmit digital audio and video. DVI is a purely digital video-only connector, no audio. It's found on a lot of modern computers. We also have HDMI, which is the most current and highest definition connection. It carries both audio and video. And then there's Thunderbolt. This is Apple's newest audio-video cable solution. It's Apple specific and doesn't work on any other platforms. You'll need to also understand scanning. Scanning is the way a picture is displayed and how it draws horizontal scan lines on the screen from the signal. We have interlacing. Interlacing draws horizontal lines on the screen from two fields and then interlaces them together. An image is not fully displayed until two frames are shown. This is indicated in a display resolution with the letter I after the vertical number of lines it's capable of drawing. For instance, you might see something that says 1080i. This represents a 1920 pixel wide by 1080 pixel tall resolution. Interlacing is generally considered to be less desirable than progressive scanning in digital video. Progressive scanning draws horizontal lines on the screen from top to bottom in a single pass and only uses one frame to display an image. This is indicated in a display's resolution with the letter P after the vertical number of lines it's capable of drawing. We could have something that says 1080p. This represents a 1920 pixel wide by 1080 pixel tall resolution. It allows for much smoother video. Since interlaced scanning only displays half of an image per frame, it uses less bandwidth. That's why it's preferred in broadcasting, since they can produce video and deliver it more cost-effectively. Devices that display interlaced images are less complex and generally cheaper. Disadvantages are image artifacts. These occur in high-motion videos where the object is moving so fast that it can be in different positions in a very short amount of time. To overcompensate for artifacts, the image is sometimes blurred, which can reduce the quality of the image. Interline Twitter is a form of the moire pattern, and this occurs when you shoot video of a tight repeating pattern. It tends to look odd and doesn't really render correctly. With progressive scanning, we don't have to worry about artifacts, since images are displayed all at once, and we won't have the issue that interlacing can produce. In turn, you will have higher quality images, since essentially you are delivering more images per second. This results in better quality. Cons include higher bandwidth and increased costs for broadcasters using analog signals. This is becoming less of an issue since we have better access to higher bandwidth these days. There's other digital video terms and concepts that you should be familiar with. The motion aspect of a motion picture is simply an illusion. What we perceive as movement is actually just still pictures played back to back at a high rate of speed. The speed at which the images are captured and displayed is known as frame rate. To the human eye, film and video seem to play as one continuous recording, but in actuality, cameras record pictures of multiple images called frames. These frames are played back at such a fast rate that they appear to be in fluid motion. Frame rate is the measurement of how quickly a number of frames appears within a second, which is why it's called FPS, or frames per second. Since the 1920s, the frame rate for cinema has been 24 FPS. This means that in 1 second of footage, we're actually seeing 24 individual pictures. But viewing this footage at 24 FPS creates the illusion of movement. The human eye is able to process individual pictures at a maximum rate of 12 FPS. Anything higher will be perceived as motion. In many films, to create the illusion of slow motion, images are captured at a higher frame rate. Then when it's slowed down or projected at normal speed, smooth slow motion is created. The higher the frame rate, the slower and smoother the motion. You can see this happening in a clip from The Matrix. We can also play with the speed in the opposite way and create time lapses. Time-lapse photography is a technique in which the frequency at which film frames are captured, the frame rate, is much lower than the frequency used to view the sequence. When played at normal speed, time appears to be moving faster and thus lapsing. Most video content uses the standard frame rate of 24 FPS, but when would you use a higher frame rate or a lower frame rate? Well, it depends on what you want to record or the effects that you want to incorporate into your work. 24 FPS is generally used for movies, streaming video content, and video game captures. They'll use the speed to achieve that classic cinematic look. 30 FPS is used by live TV broadcasters, think sports and news, and most TV shows use this speed to increase their quality. Sports in particular need to show movement more clearly and in real time, which is why 30 FPS is the frame rate of choice. As 4K video resolution becomes more prevalent, a broader audience has been introduced to 60 FPS. 4K resolution lets a higher frame rate be displayed and gives the footage an amazingly detailed and lifelike view. This is perfect if you want to record a video game. This frame rate also increases the smoothness of the action. There are instances where you'll want to use higher FPS, such as 120 frames per second and more. This speed produces slow motion video and captures video games with fast and furious action, things that include fighting, shooting, or sports games. Going higher than 120 FPS is a rare occurrence for most filmmakers. It requires a high-speed camera to make the footage look natural and smooth. Overscanning is the bit you get outside of what you would normally see in a TV. To accommodate a display's bezel, video is often shot so that it slips slightly under the TV's edge. This means that the screen overscans so that we don't see any border. It basically cuts a little bit of the edges off so we don't see the borders or edges. You can think of this as a digital video bleed. Overscan refers to a cropped image on your TV screen. Underscan is usually intended. It refers to the black bars that appear around a movie or a show. The bars appear because the content was filmed in a different proportion than your TV screen. You may see black bars that appear above or below a movie because it has a wider aspect ratio than your TV screen. Black bars could also appear on the left and the right of the screen because it has a smaller aspect ratio than your TV screen. Because of the way things overscan and different resolutions, you'll always want to have safe title areas. As a result, we leave the outermost 15% free of titles or text because it can be lost due to the overscanning issues and conversions between computers, TVs, and video format translations. The use of safe areas in TV production ensures that the most important parts of the picture are seen by the majority of viewers. We have something called the title safe area or the action safe area. This is a rectangular area which is far enough in from the four edges that text or graphics will show neatly. This includes a margin and doesn't incur any sort of distortion. The action safe area is the larger rectangle, shown here in yellow. This area can be considered the margin of the television screen in that the picture elements are generally kept out of this area to create a buffer around the edge of the screen so elements don't pile up against the edge of the screen and viewers don't lose important movement or action. Commonly used aspect ratios are 16:9, which is considered widescreen. This is the standard aspect ratio that's commonly shared by online videos, documentaries, and films. It captures a large amount of data with details. Then we have a vertical aspect ratio of 9:16. This is how your video is recorded on your phone if you film in portrait mode. Full screen is considered 4:3. It's the aspect ratio that was used on television before widescreen was used, and it generally focuses on a particular element at a time. Square is 1:1. It's a perfect square ratio and is commonly used on Instagram. Anamorphic is 2.40:1. It's a widescreen and it's often used in movies. It's similar to 16:9, but the top and the bottom are cropped. This effect gives a cinematic feel. When high-definition TVs became the norm, manufacturers developed a shorthand to explain their display resolutions. The most common numbers you see are 720p, 1080p, 1140p, or 4K. These shorthand numbers are sometimes used to describe computer monitors as well, even though, in general, a monitor is capable of a higher definition display than TV. Here's how the shorthand translates. HD, or HD Ready, is 720p, which equals 1280 by 720. FHD, or Full HD Resolution, is 1080p. This equates to 1920 by 1080. QHD, or Quad HD Resolution, is referred to as 1440p. This translates to 2560 by 1440. This is typically seen on gaming monitors and high-end smartphones. 1440p is 4 times the resolution of 720p HD. To make things even more confusing, many premium smartphones feature a so-called 2960 by 1440 Quad HD resolution, which still fits into 1440p. We also have 4K, or UHD, which stands for Ultra HD resolution. This is equal to 3840 by 2160. This is a huge display resolution, and it's found on premium TVs and computer monitors. 2160p is also called 4K because the height is close to 4000 pixels. In other words, it offers 4 times the pixels of 1080p. We also have 8K. 8K offers 16 times more pixels than the regular 1080 Full HD resolution. For now, you'll only see 8K on expensive TVs from Samsung and LG, but we'll probably see changes in that as time goes on. You need to understand what codecs and digital video containers are. Codec is a term that comes up a lot when discussing audio and video formats, as well as compression techniques used to make files smaller. But what exactly is a codec, and where does the term come from? The word codec comes from the terms coder and decoder, which roughly describes a codec's job in terms of data transmission and storage. Modern codecs are software-based. In the past, hardware codecs were more common, particularly when analog formats first started to be digitized. Codec is a term used to describe software that can encode and decode data. As an example, an MP3 codec is used to create MP3 files from audio data. To play that MP3 file back on a computer or separate device, you'll need a codec that can decode that format. Codecs are not file types. They are simply compression schemes. The most common one that you'll find compatible with most video containers today is H.264 or MPEG-4. This is what we'll be using in our projects in this class. So why do we need codecs? Well, video and music files are big. I mean really big, which means they're usually difficult to transfer over the internet. To speed up downloads, algorithms encode or shrink a signal for transmission and then decode it for viewing or editing. Without codecs, downloads of video and audio would take 3 to 5 times longer than they do now. In essence, a codec is used to encode data in a format that can be transmitted or stored and later viewed with a counterpart decoder. Video containers are the architectures that comprise movie types. Examples are MOV, AVI, OGG, FLV, MP4, RM, WMV, etc. These also include metadata about the movie. These could be things like chapter markers. When saving a video, you choose from the video container format separately from choosing the codec, and some video containers will only work with certain codecs. When we begin learning about video, you'll see how we can utilize codecs and video containers in practice. But for now, I just want you to be familiar with these terms so that as we talk about these things, you'll have a little bit of understanding about what it all means.